First published in Harper's Magazine in 1953, Lamb to the Slaughter stands as one of Roald Dahl's most renowned short stories for adults. Dahl, 1916–1990, a British novelist, screenwriter, and prolific author of children's stories in the 20th century, is celebrated for works like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Matilda, The Witches, James and the Giant Peach, and Fantastic Mr. Fox, many of which have been successfully adapted for stage and screen. Dahl crafted 4 collections of adult stories spanning from 1946 to 1974, often infusing his short fiction with a dark sense of humor and surprising, macabre plot twists. In 1958, Lamb to the Slaughter found its way onto television screens as Alfred Hitchcock presented an adaptation. Furthermore, a slew of Dahl's other short stories were reimagined for the British television series Tales of the Unexpected, broadcast from 1979 to 1988. Dahl's literary contributions earned him esteemed accolades such as the 1983 World Fantasy Award for Life Achievement and the title of Children's Author of the Year at the 1990 British Book Awards. Additionally, his short fiction garnered 3 Edgar Awards. The story unfolds on a Thursday evening as Mary Maloney eagerly anticipates her husband's return from work. The living room exudes warmth and tidiness, bathed in welcoming light. 6 months pregnant, Mary alternates between glancing at the clock and engrossing herself in sewing. At precisely 4:50 p.m., her spirits soar upon hearing the distinct sound of Patrick Maloney's car arriving in the driveway. She greets her husband at the door with a kiss and affectionately addresses him as darling. Patrick responds tersely with a mere hello. Following the customary hanging of his coat, Mary proceeds to pour 2 whiskey and sodas. She presents the stronger drink to her husband and takes her seat opposite him. Mary cherishes this daily ritual, aware that Patrick prefers to savor his initial drink in tranquil solitude. She sits contentedly, relishing the simple pleasure of being in his company. Yet, her contentment falters as Patrick abruptly drains his glass and rises to replenish it. Although she offers her assistance, he curtly instructs her to remain seated. Mary discerns the potency of his second whiskey and soda, but her offer to fetch his slippers is met with a refusal. Thursdays typically entail dining out for the Maloneys, yet Mary, sensing her husband's fatigue, extends an offer to prepare supper. He promptly declines with brusqueness. As Mary approaches the freezer, Mr. Maloney sternly repeats his command to sit down. She complies, her movements now more tentative. In a moment of profound shock, Mr. Maloney delivers a concise yet startling announcement, the exact words of which remain undisclosed in the narrative, leaving only an implication of his intention to leave his wife. Mary, stunned, regards him with a kind of dazed horror. Despite the untimeliness of his decision, he assures Mary of his financial support and expresses a desire to avoid any scandal that could jeopardize his career as a police detective. Numbed by the revelation, Mary responds as though nothing unusual has occurred, declaring her intent to prepare supper. She descends to the cellar, retrieving a frozen leg of lamb from the freezer. Upon her return to the living room, her husband's back is turned, and he abruptly declares his intention to go out. Without hesitation, Mary raises the frozen leg of lamb and strikes him over the head. Mr. Maloney sways briefly before collapsing to the floor. As Mary regains her composure, the grim reality dawns on her: her husband is dead. She comprehends the dire consequences of murder, including the possibility of a death sentence. Despite contemplating that death would be a relief for herself, Mary refuses to allow her unborn child to share such a fate. Thinking swiftly, she places the lamb in the oven and tidies her appearance. A wry smile graces her reflection in the mirror as she rehearses her request for potatoes and a can of peas in a cheerful tone. With determined composure, Mary heads to her local grocery store, arriving just before 6 o'clock. She greets the grocer, Sam, with a cheerful demeanor, explaining her need for peas and potatoes to complement the lamb she's preparing at home, offering the excuse that her husband is too fatigued to dine out. Sam recommends some cheesecake to accompany the meal, and Mary readily agrees to include it. She hurries back home, aware that her actions must seem entirely ordinary. She convinces herself that this is just another evening, and she's preparing her husband's dinner. Upon entering her home, Mary is genuinely shocked by the sight of her husband's lifeless body and bursts into tears. She immediately calls the police station where her husband worked to report the death of Patrick Maloney. Two policemen, Sergeant Jack Noonan and O'Malley, both colleagues of her husband, promptly arrive at the scene. Mary is still in tears when they get there. She recognizes them and collapses into Noonan's arms, tearfully recounting how she discovered her husband's body after a quick trip to the grocery store. More officers and personnel arrive at the crime scene, including a doctor, 2 detectives, and a photographer. They all treat Mary with kindness and compassion. One of the detectives goes to the grocery store to verify Mary's alibi and returns, confirming that Sam reported her behavior as normal. After Mr. Maloney's body is taken away, Mary remains at home with the detectives and policemen. Sergeant Noonan offers to have a female relative stay with her, but Mary declines. She remains in the house while the police search for the murder weapon, which they suspect to be a heavy metal object. Mary suggests checking the garage, but by 9 o'clock, their search has yielded no significant findings. Mary asks Sergeant Noonan to pour her a whiskey and suggests that he have one as well. Though he mentions that he's not supposed to drink while on duty, he ultimately agrees. The other officers return from outside and also accept Mary's offer of alcohol. Noonan notices that the oven is still on, prompting Mary to request a small favor from him and the 3 other policemen. She insists that since they are working to apprehend Mr. Maloney's murderer, they should have dinner together. Maloney's killer. She believes her husband would have wanted them to enjoy the perfectly cooked lamb. With some persuasion, the policemen agree to her request. As they sit down to eat, Mary listens to their conversation from the living room. While discussing the murder weapon, the men speculate that the person who killed Patrick Maloney must have used something as heavy as a sledgehammer. They all concur that the murder weapon is probably right under their very noses. In the living room, Mary stifles a laugh to herself. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like if you did and be sure to subscribe. Thank you.